Master Assassins, Part 1, Eternity Camp. This begins with an epigraph from Yeats. Down the fanatic, down the clown, down, down, hammer them down. By the third day, the rumor can no longer be contained. It is whispered in the black tents, shared like smokes among the men on patrol, murmured in the drill yard before the bellowed morning prayer. It is weird and horrific, and yet a curse no one can fail to understand. Someone's mind has been stolen, and the thief still walks the camp. The signs are innumerable. The master of horses finds 2 stallions lamed overnight. An armory clerk displays a broadsword twisted into a spiral like a blade of grass. A cook discovers worms thick as men's fingers writhing in the belly of a well-roasted boar, and the prophet's eldest son has a toothache. These calamities, and others shared over dawn biscuits or evening rubbish fires or blazing midday marches, point to a single conclusion. The camp is under attack, and the assailant can only be a yatra, a spirit thief, which, as everyone knows, can work dark magic from within its victim's pilfered soul. Condrey Hingeman, distinguished corporal, smiles at this talk of possession, but the frowns of his fellow soldiers bring him quickly to his senses. The prophet's firstborn. Nothing touching that family is a matter for mirth. The son's toothache, moreover, has struck just hours after he announced the date of the spring offensive. And isn't the boar his gift to the soldiers in honor of the victories ahead? Condrey tries to drop this matter. Sorcery isn't high on his list of preoccupations. They're at war. But to his surprise, the hostile looks only multiply, as though he has crossed some threshold of recklessness. Finally, one evening after final prayers, a sergeant beckons him near. "It's not you," he whispers, "it's that half-brother of yours." "Mektu, sir." Condrey jumps, startling the man. "What the hell has he done now?" "Talk, that's what," says the sergeant. "He won't shut up about the yatra, and he's got the men scared to death. It's the way he tells the stories. It's the look on his face." Condrey understands the sergeant all too well, and that night he barely sleeps. In the morning, anxious and miserable, he prowls the camp until he locates his brother. "You jackass," he says, "you'll get us killed talking like that." They are behind a recreation tent on the camp's southern perimeter. The air reeks of cane liquor and unwashed men. An impenetrable wall of fishhook tree branches cuts off the view of the drylands beyond. It is very early. Condrey hears the flat, tireless tolling of goat bells as a herd flows around a corner of the thorn wall, and a child's laugh, and the rising chord of the fiddler trees, aerial roots rasping one on another, singing home the little brown bats that roost in their arms. "Us," says Mektu. "Of course us," Condrey snaps. "The prophet knows who our father is. She knows everything about the old man." Mektu raises an eyebrow as if to say, "Not everything." Condrey shakes his head. "What a pig you are," he says. "I hope they send you off to fight ghouls in the marshes. I'll do a dance, I swear." Mektu shakes his head. "You'd miss me. Everyone needs someone they can trust." Condrey can't quite keep the smile off his face. Mektu laughs aloud, throws an arm over his shoulder, kisses his forehead. Condrey is laughing too, but perhaps he tenses at his brother's touch, for Mektu abruptly releases him and steps back. "You don't believe me." He is a lean soldier with a spine that is never quite straight. His laugh has something of a horse's whinny. His eyes meander like gnats. Condrey is shorter but more sound. He has bested Mektu often at wrestling and battle dance, which are juried sports here in the Army of Revelation. But he has also seen his half-brother drunk and brawling, and hopes never to fight him in earnest. "How do you know it's a yatra?" Condrey demands. "Bad things happen all the time." "That's the proof," says Mektu. "Each day is worse than the one before. Batali thinks it was called out of the desert by a witch." Batali's a fool, and high before breakfast. Last week he said he was engaged to a goat. Mektu's face darkens. "It's here, brother," he says. "Then whose mind has it taken? No one knows. No one ever knows." "What if I told you I did?" Condrey turns him a wry smile, but the look fades quickly into one of alarm. "You don't really," he murmurs, "do you?" Among the worst powers ascribed to a yatra is the ability to sense when it has been detected, to look out through stolen eyes, read the faces around it, and know who has guessed the truth. Such persons are doomed. The yatra will not rest until it kills them. Mektu snaps a branch from the fishhook tree fence. He draws his thumb over a long, savage thorn. "You've never faced one," he says. Kandri bites his lips. He's heard the stories from before the time he came to live with Mektu and the rest of the family. Absurd stories, conflicting, intractable as weeds. How a yatra assaulted their little brother, the youngest, who still sleeps with a knife in his hand. Or was the target that spinster aunt who set the orphanage on fire? Or their father who rises, dresses, unlocks gates, walks for miles in his sleep? Or Mektu himself? "There's never any proof," Kandri hears himself say. "I don't believe the damn things exist." 4 cases last year. Kandri chuckles. 4 rumored yatras in the world's greatest army. All of them elsewhere, naturally, in some mountain division or wilderness fort, never here in Eternity Camp where the question might be settled. But perhaps this time it will be settled. The eldest son has a toothache, after all. Then he sees the flash of red on Mektu's finger, bright in the morning sun. "Never laugh at them," says his half-brother. "They can't stand it when you laugh." Many nights thereafter, in the wastes and hovels and palaces of Urath, Kandri will lie brooding on the power of shame. What did he unleash by laughing at Mektu then? If he had summoned more patience, if he had listened to his half-brother's ravings a bit more generously, if he had simply kept his silence, everything might have been different. Even the murders, even that catastrophic night. His feet might have carried him elsewhere. He might never have glimpsed the crooked shack or heard the cries from within. He and Mektu might still be as they once were, unnoticed, invisible, far less than a footnote to this war. Imagine that, he will think, to be ordinary, to be something the world overlooks. No one's obsession, no one's idea of evil incarnate, blood traitors, spears hurled with cold precision at the gods. That evening the brothers meet again. Kandri is in their unit's dinner line, which snakes out of the mess tent and into the yard. The area is crowded with fighting men seated on stumps and makeshift benches, eating from tin plates and calabashes, waving away flies. Boys from the village hover about the edges of the yard, laughing and horsing around, waiting for the peels and bones and gristle their mothers will transform into soup. Mektu steps from the tent and approaches him, wearing an odd little smile. "Bugger off," he says. Kandri scowls. "What the hell is your problem? You walked up to me." Mektu shakes his head. "They're going to throw us at the Galsune again. Just us, just the 8th Legion. Against the same pricks who cut us to ribbons 2 years ago. I meant Krol Kira, bug over, bugger out. You're with me, aren't you?" His brother is still smiling. Kandri feels his blood run cold. He turns away furiously composed and walks straight out of the yard. Mektu is speaking of desertion, of bugging out. He has garbled the phrase in Khazraji, the world's dying common tongue, but then helpfully repeated himself in the language of their clan, which nearly everyone in the army speaks. It is the act of a lunatic. "Only your love, children, can light the way to heaven's path," the prophet teaches. "Without that flame we are lost, all of us lost, and the world shall wither like a seedling in a cave." Love is compulsory. Even a dispirited sigh can mean punishment. Desertion means death by torture, live coals in the eye sockets, shards of glass down the throat. Kandri smokes for an hour behind his legion's stables, hiding from Mektu, squatting low on his heels. Dinner is over. He won't get a crumb before breakfast, and tonight he will have to avoid the drinking areas. His brother will appear in one of them to play his allotted role in the camp, somewhere between daring eccentric and despised clown. It has always been the same with Mektu, the amusing stories, the elaborate jokes, the poetry committed to memory, lofty or obscene, the brilliant vocal impressions. Kandri's brother can draw an audience just by opening his mouth. But only a fool draws attention in Eternity Camp. Before the Yatra panic began, there was talk of a new and horrific loyalty test. Conceived by the prophet's seers in the bowels of the Palace of Radiance, a means of distinguishing between the faithful and the false. Does such a test truly exist? And if it does, how would each of them fare? I might pass, Kandri thinks. I might get that lucky. He would not. For Mektu has a gift for saying the wrong thing. You can take him to a birthday party and count the minutes until he makes a child cry. At weddings, he is apt to mention the last woman the groom has slept with. "You're a lucky girl, Chelly, just ask Tsukina." Kandri once dragged him to the hospital to visit their dying grandmother. Mektu lectured her about the dangers of sunstroke and propositioned the nurse. You could only shake your head and find a way to protect yourself, of course, to help your brother without wearing him like a chain. They are not close, Kandri reminds himself. They call each other brother, dropping the half, and burn sage for their ancestors, and swap shirts on New Year's morning, like all brothers in the Chiloto clan. Yet what do such courtesies change? Blood means nothing, finally, and a man who pokes tigers with a stick will one day be mauled. You can take the stick away, he'll find another. Last week the prophet's youngest son, a boy barely into his teens, stabbed the village tailor and set fire to his shop. The old man had mended his vest with the wrong color thread. Sticks are everywhere. You have to walk about with closed fists or they will jump into your hands. But can it possibly be true? Another assault on the Galsune. Kandri nurses his cheroot down to a lip-scorching bud. He thinks, Chindolin, that's a question for Chindolin. The master smith knows more about what is going on in the sprawling camp than anyone. He is no gossip. It is merely that the officers confide in him while he repairs their sabers, their bejeweled daggers and kamas and mataglins, all those distinguishing blades. They like him, those officers. He asks no favors, drops no hints about the lightness of his purse. He simply works and listens to their chatter, and no one ever learns what he overhears. No one save the brothers, that is. The weapons shop is always brightly lit. There is the yellow glow of oil lamps dangling on chains from the roof beams. And there is the furnace, smoldering like the throat of a dragon. The broad front door stands open, letting a little of the dragon's breath escape. Kandri pauses at the threshold. He does not wish to blunder in on an officer. Tonight, however, he sees no one, not even Chindolin. Only the small desert bats come and go, improbable acrobats, feasting on the insects drawn to the light. He steps within. The heat of the fire welcome, the night already cold. He whistles for Chindolin. They are friendly enough for whistles, though the older man will pretend to be annoyed. But no answer comes. Arranged near the furnace are the anvil, stacks of raw iron, cooling tubs, and a rough table on which Chindolin lays out his tools. Kandri moves carefully between these objects. Where can the smith have gone? The furnace is roaring. In its mouth, a length of iron glows red upon the coals. Then Kandri sees the knife. It lies on a clean blue cloth at the center of the table. He knows it at once for a mataglin, one of the huge desert knives of the Parthian nomads. It is almost as long as a machete, and it broadens near the tip, where 3 vicious teeth curve out like bending flames. A weapon made for beheading, disemboweling, for killing with a single blow. This mataglin, however, was clearly made for a prince or sartaf or some other ruler of men. The steel blade is inlaid with gold in a beautiful, swirling script that races from the pommel to the teeth. The pommel itself is a smooth, cream-colored wood bound with rings of gold. Small rubies like droplets of blood encircle the handguard, and at the base is a pale blue stone the size of a quail's egg. Under the lamps the stone gleams like enchanted ice. Kandri's heart is pounding. He has never been alone with such wealth. How can it be lying here? Why is it not under guard? He glances left and right, then starts to turn away. But the blade is fascinating, and he will never again see such a thing. Not once, not ever. He reaches out to touch the stone. "Little bastard, get your paws away!" Kandri nearly jumps out of his skin. The smith is seated at the far end of the building, copper jug in hand, broad buttocks tipping back on a stool. "Uncle, I was just—" "Trying to get your head snipped off. That knife belongs to the enlightened one." Kandri shivers. Of course it does. Who but the prophet could possibly afford such a treasure? Chindolin rolls to his feet and saunters near. He takes a towel from around his enormously powerful shoulders and mops his face. He is Melonji by birth. His family comes from the great cattle-herding lands to the south. but he has spent so many years among the Chilotos that only his bulk and pure chocolate blackness hint at his origins. A leather apron covers his torso like a suit of mail. His jeweler's glasses are high on his forehead. There is no smell of liquor on him. He drinks only water, gallons of water, when he works. "She left you alone with this knife. The prophet trusts you, uncle." Chindelin scowls at him, cockeyed. "Stop calling me uncle. I'm not that old." Condrey smiles. He will always be uncle. In point of fact, they are not blood relations, but the bond between Chindelin and his family is absolute. The smith is his father's best friend and godfather to all 6 of the old man's children. Before joining the army, he had eaten at their table 3 or 4 nights a week. "I don't know why they left me alone," he says. "For a while, the men who brought it here were standing around like goons. They wanted it sharpened, nothing else, and I was nearly finished when their commander showed up and took them away. He said a new team would be along any minute to collect the knife, but I've been waiting over an hour. I wish they'd fucking arrive." "Is it old?" "Old! Is the ocean large? Is the desert hot at noontime? That's a Cthinjun blade from before the empire of the Khazraj. It's ancient. Why are you here?" "Can I touch it?" "No, imbecile! Keep your goddamn distance! Step over there, by the door." "It's cold." "So is a spear through your belly button. Why are you here, Condrey?" "I want to know about the spring offensive, uncle." Chindelin glares at him again. He is, in fact, old enough. He pulls off his jeweler's glasses and slides them into his pocket. "You look starved, like a rat." "I'm all right," says Condrey. Chindelin sighs and walks to the table. He lifts a small wooden box and brings it back to where Condrey hovers by the door. He lifts the lid. Inside are sausages, glistening with oil, lined up like cigars. Condrey's head swims. He has not tasted sausage in years. "Take one." "No, take 2, but eat them both, right now." "They're fresh, aren't they? Who the hell gave them to you?" "Ojulan." Condrey's hand snaps back as if from a live coal. Ojulan is the prophet's 3rd son. Also a gleeful killer, a maniac. Unlike his elder brothers, he has no military rank and takes little interest in the War of Revelation. He is mercurial. He can be found drinking with the troops at sunset and whipping their backs to ribbons before the rising of the moon. He is not clever like his brothers. His speech is notably less refined. But for all this, the prophet dotes on him, cherishes him, perhaps more than all the rest. Consequently, there is no more dangerous man in the camp. Chindelin gestures at the knife. "That's his Madiglin you wanted to touch." "Devil shit! You said it was the prophet's." "She's making a present of it to the 3rd-born. He wants to use it in war, can you believe that? That thing belongs in a museum, or mounted on some Sartef's wall, and not just because it's priceless. There's a history behind that knife, I gather. Dark sins and curses. Rubbish if you ask me. But Ojulan believes it will make him a hero on the battlefield. Take the sausage, Condrey." The meat is so delicious it hurts. For a few precious moments, Condrey cannot think of knives, Ojulan, Mektu's terrible rumor. Chindelin laughs and pokes him in the chest. "You mention these to anybody, it's your ass." He had a whole wagon load of dainties, Ojulan did. Wine, brandy, licorice, seed cakes, honey cakes, hams, straight from the valley. He gave me these with a big smile. It's true what they say about his teeth. Gold? Solid gold. 6 or 8 of them, anyway. Check as hell, but that smile gave me the creeps. Condrey gestures at the Madiglin. "It won't get damaged. Ojulan never goes anywhere near the fighting." Chindelin's smile fades. He's going north with the 3rd Legion. Condrey is speechless. North is the largest, hottest front, where the Vajeks resist them still. The depraved and bloody Vajeks, that is the phrase all children learn. Merciless occupiers before the prophet drove them out. Lunatics, liars, believers in a single God. "Why now?" says Condrey. Chindelin leans close. "Ojulan had to have that knife," he murmurs. "They say he was squirming, begging, that he promised to become a war hero, if only Mommy gave him this toy." His uncle's disrespect chills Condrey's blood. What has gotten into everyone? To call her radiance that, even to whisper such words in confidence. even to think them. He puts the rest of the sausage in his mouth and chews. The meat seems almost flavorless now. He wipes his hand on his trousers. Nektu says we're going to attack the Galsune, just our legion, just the 8th. He's right, says Chindolin. There was talk of it this morning. In a day or two everyone will know. The chill deepens. Are they hurt somehow, the Galsune? Kandri asks. Chindolin shrugs. Maybe their crops failed, or they've suffered some disease? I couldn't tell you, boy. Because otherwise it's madness, says Kandri. The 8th Legion's too small. You know what happened the last time. The smith rubs his face. All at once he is reluctant to look Kandri in the eye. Not as well as you do, he says. Just past midnight, a team of soldiers comes for the knife. They are led by Ojulan's deputy, a ferocious officer named Idaru. A colonel and a terror in his own right, Idaru stands 6'10". On his cheeks are the ritual burns of the Mesurat clan, spirals that look as if they were made with heated wire. He storms up to Kandri and screams in his face, "What in Jekka's hell are you doing here? Who are you to gaze at the prophet's gift to Lord Ojulan? Were you planning to steal it, you dog?" Kandri's uncle lifts his hands. "I asked him to be here, Colonel. I didn't know what was happening. Lord Ojulan told me he'd be back within the hour." "Lord Ojulan is," Idaru stammers, "busy, detained. Lord Ojulan has 1,000 cares." "Yes, sir. And I knew Corporal Hingeman would fight to protect his property, just as I would. He's like a son to me, sir." The colonel's nostrils flare. "That is good, then. That is excellent. Why did you not speak up for yourself, Hingeman? The prophet requires boldness of her men." Kandri promises, with great contrition, to be bold. "See that you are." Idaru's eyes shift to Chindolin. "Your man here could be out drinking and fornicating, Smith, but instead he is here with you, guarding the thirdborn's property. I am pleased with you, Hingeman." "Thank you, Colonel," says Kandri. "Your breath is somewhat foul, however." "Do you brush your teeth?" "Twice daily, sir." "Show me." Kandri opens wide. Before he knows what is happening, the colonel's hand is in his mouth. "Close gently. That's right." The colonel withdraws his hand. Kandri stiffens. Idaru has placed an object in the pouch of his cheek, and his men, all of them, have aimed their spears in his direction. "Speak through your teeth," says the colonel. "Don't move your jaw until I say so. Your life depends on your obedience." Sweat breaks out all over Kandri's body. The thing in his mouth is light and brittle, like a hollow egg. A hint of sugar teases his tongue. "Colonel, what in Ong's name?" Chindolin starts forward, but Idaru's look stops him cold. "Keep still," he says. "This is no punishment. Corporal Hingeman is among the first to be honored with a chance to prove his loyalty, and to place a new tool in the arsenal of the prophet. We hope to use this test often in the future, if all goes well." The new test, Kandri thinks, the loyalty test, it's real. Ong all-merciful, I'm going to die. "There is an insect in your mouth," says the colonel, "or more precisely, a chrysalis. The vermin itself is dormant, but the warmth of your blood will change that, any moment now." Kandri gives a distorted cry. Something has twitched inside the shell. "Do not touch your cheek," snaps Idaru. "Stop that shaking at once." "I'm loyal," Kandri pleads through locked teeth. "I love the prophet. Her feet walk heavens." "The insect is an ash locust," says the colonel. "It has neither bite nor sting, but the fluid inside the chrysalis is a contact poison. Should it touch your flesh, you will be paralyzed. First your facial muscles, then your throat, eventually your lungs and heart." Kandri starts to plead again, but the colonel silences him with a gesture. "If you are loyal, you have nothing to fear. The chrysalis alone is almost too fragile to touch, but we have glazed it with another substance, a rather extraordinary substance, a sugar that dissolves more quickly in a liar's mouth than that of an honest man. Do you follow? Speak falsely, and the shell will rupture before I finish my questions. Speak the truth and live." Kandri stares at the colonel, rigid with horror. He can distinctly taste the sugar now. His uncle's chest is heaving, his big hands forming fists. "Kandri Hingeman," says Idaru, "are you a loving servant of her radiance, the prophet?" A nod will suffice. "Suffice to kill me?" Kandri cannot help the thought. He dares not hesitate. He nods. The locust twitches, and so does Kandri, every part of him save his face. And are you a willing soldier in this war, Esidaru? Sweetness coats Kandri's tongue, but in his mind a strange cold has descended. Is he willing? Is any part of him still true? He nods. The locust is squirming violently now. The shell quivers and jumps. Colonel Idaru, pleads Chindolin, this is a flawless soldier you're experimenting on. He nearly met his death in the last Galsuni campaign. He had an audience with the prophet herself. He's one of us. I'll stake my life on that. The colonel turns to Chindolin with deliberate slowness. If you value him so, why delay me with these outbursts? You may doom an innocent man, if he is innocent. Another extravagant pause. At last his gaze returns to Kandri. One more question, he says. Is there any person in this camp, anyone at all, whose loyalty you doubt? Kandri closes his eyes, and in the darkness, Mektu's face appears like a sallow bloom. His crooked grin, his provocations, his hopeless dreams of escape. The insect writhes, the shell bulges. He shakes his head. Spit it out, snaps the colonel. Kandri doubles over. The chrysalis drops from his mouth, slick and translucent. Even as it strikes the dirt, it ruptures, and a barbed black leg twitches free. Then it's gone, crushed by the colonel's boot. Idaru sets a hand on Kandri's arm. Rejoice, he says. This too is part of winning the war. You have both faith and courage, Hingeman, and from this moment on no one will question them. Our prophet shall hear of your courage today, Corporal. That's a promise. Thank you.